You can see the transcription. That's fine. All right, gentlemen, good evening. Let's go before our Lord in prayer. Start right there. Father God, I give thanks to you for today, for the privilege to serve you in your kingdom today and every day, Lord. I want to thank you for these young men assembled here and those who are out on vacation this week, who will be hearing this in video later this week, Father. Lord, I pray that you will bless us and keep us, guide us and protect us, Lord, that you will feed us from your word tonight and, Lord, from history. Lord, may we fill these men with vision, that they can prepare themselves for the challenges that come ahead of them in our country. That you bless the labor of their hands, give them sharp minds and sharp wits. Lord, may they carry the gospel on your tongues and on their feet. In your holy name we do pray, and amen. Okay, we're going to pick up. First of all, let me begin with George, you got me still?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there any questions from last time? I'm going to start with questions from last time, and I'm going to go right into the homework from last time.
Well, out the home, I was only able to print off one in my printer. So only have one.
Let's see what you got. All right. Okay. So very good. And then Chandler, were you able to make your outline?
I was able to do the two. Yeah, I did as much as I could. I got home yesterday from camp, and I did as much as I could yesterday night.
Okay. Oh, you've been out of camp. Okay, that is no problem. And I know this is Caleb's first week, so he's running in from behind. And I've got 4 guys that are out, so you guys will catch up on some of this next week. What's going to be important is particularly on these things. So this is very good. This is an outline.
Specific assignments, though. The specific to me ones.
Right, and you all have. So we're going to get into those in just a minute. The specific assignments to you. So this is what you want. You want to be collecting these up, and then you'll just put put a number on them. Hey, number 1. So by the end of the course, you'll have probably a couple dozen of these. Right, each time I assign a outline, and these outlines are for your reference and also for us to go through in class. So this is good. We're gonna go through this one. Excellent. Okay, so this is exactly what we're about to go into. So hold on to that for just a minute. That's exactly what we're about to talk about in the morality of warfare. So that's going to be key. Okay, so going into last week, George, were you able to see the video at all?
Yes, sir. I watched the recording.
You also recorded. Okay, so for the video from last week, there was some homework. And let's review the homework up on the slide here. First of all, Walker is out. Parr's going to be in a second. George, you had an outline. We'll start with you. You had a specific research task for Caesar crossing the Rubicon. You can finish that, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Did you do that?
I didn't have an outline, but I had a paper from earlier this year from school that I just went ahead and used.
That's fine. Since you had a paper on it, that's okay. Here's what I want you to do is you're going to give us a short summary on some of the highlights of things related to Caesar crossing the Rubicon. And remember from last time, what was the significance of Caesar crossing the Rubicon that we talked about?
It was you broke the law, sir.
He broke the law. That's correct. That was one thing. What else? What else was significant about Caesar crossing the Rubicon? And I realize this has nothing to do with American history, except that it's important background. Why is this significant to American history? Why is Caesar crossing the Rubicon significant to the history of America? Well, what was the government? Go ahead. I'll give another minute for you guys to think before I give the answer. Go ahead. What was the government what was the government he was? Parr, welcome aboard, brother. Sure. Come on in, find yourself a seat, get yourself comfortable. Okay, we just got started, so you're not far behind. Glad to have you here, but guys, we're screaming right through the homework right now. Do you have any of your outlines ready?
I'll print it out on my laptop here.
They're on your laptop. We'll print them out in a minute, but be prepared to talk about them here in just a second. I'm starting with George's. Well, actually, let me back up then before I go, George, into you. Parr, you had 3 that I had, 2 that I had you research. let's talk through the Roman War first. Tell me about the Roman Wars. The Roman War related to uh, around between 100 BC and 0.
I looked up the Roman warfare here.
The Roman what? Oh, rules of warfare. That's what I had you looking for. Tell me what you found. Nice and loud so everybody can hear you. If you need a minute to get yourself set up, all right, let me just have George start. George, let's go into Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Set the stage for that. Oh, I lost George. Of course. He's supposed to be briefing right now. Come back on in a second. Come back on right now. George, you back in?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
All right. Give us the stage, set the background for Caesar crossing the Rubicon, and talk to me, Goose.
Sir, 1 minute to retrieve the paper.
Okay. While you do that, I'm going to get everybody else in position so you all know how to expect this thing when it comes out. So Caesar's crossing the Rubicon. Par, you're going to cover rules of Roman warfare and St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Brandon, you were going to talk about Sparta.
Do that next. I think I can get another print.
Okay, so yours didn't print with you. And then Vindicio contra Tyrannus. Did you cover that?
Everything, I don't have it.
Okay.
Except the.
On both of Sparta and VCT, without pulling up your outline, did you do the research?
Yes.
So you're able to talk about it at least.
It was a.
You give me what you need in a minute. Just think through it. Okay, and then for everybody, then we are going to go back into after that. We're going to talk about ancient warfare a little bit. We're going to talk about pagan warfare, Israelite warfare, and the biblical rules of warfare. Did everybody read or at least skim through, or who was able to find Vindicia contra Tyrannus? Did you find it? It's a hard document to find. George, you find it?
A book that I bought when you first talked about it a couple of years ago that I have. That's the full document too.
Yeah, you got the whole thing. With the book is like really extensive. I also have, if you guys don't have it, if you weren't able to find it, I have a copy of it. I will send to you. The how many of you guys need it? I'm going to send it out to you right now, so you guys will have it. Because we're gonna be digging back into Vindicia a little later.
Hey,
Huh?
Yeah, let me shoot this out to Caleb. You need a copy of it. What's your email? DJ Collins at Gmail. 4,000. 1,000 at Gmail. Okay. Who else needs it? Par? You need a copy of Vindicia contra Tyrannus?
Yes, sir.
Par. I'll send it to, I don't have your email, so I'm gonna send it to your mother. Okay. Foster, let's see if I got you in here. I don't. Brandon, what's your email? No, I got Henel. Nope, I do not. I'll send it to Owen. I'll send it to Stone. Nick Stone. I'll send it to George Mudd. Fantastic. I'll have it. Okay, and I'm going to upload it. So this is Vindici contra Tyrannus.
Did I get a copy of that too?
You may, Chandler. I'm going to send it to you as well. That'll save you guys some research. Part of why I wanted you to research is I want to see if you can even find it. It's an interesting document that has kind of like disappeared in history to a large extent, which is surprising to me. Where's my attached document button on here? Let's see here. Right there. Boom. It took me a while to find it. It is written at a high collegiate level. I mean, a really hard. I have to stop and focus to read this thing. So don't be surprised if you have difficulty reading it. I want you to skim it later on because we're about to go into it right now. Whoops, wrong file. VCore. Operations. Training. Constitution, PME, I think. Readings. Okay, sir. Yes, you.
Well, you guys talk about this man. I don't get to real quick.
Go ahead.
Just to like
You
do.
guys can duck in and out as you gotta do duck in. Okay, if you gotta hit the head or something, if you're falling asleep, let me know if I'm getting too boring. I am told that I have one of those voices that put young women to sleep. So if you're falling asleep, you know. You can just kind of pull up here in the hallway. I just want to kind of listen in. Okay. All right.
My email will be ready.
Oh, shoot, I just fired it off. I'll fire it to you as well. That's okay. I'll just forward it up to you. Sent items. All right. Forward it to, and Dean, I don't know if I can do yours as well directly if you have one, but go ahead. Foster.
B.A. Foster, all lowercase. 2007 at iCloud.com.
At what, iCloud?
Yes.
I forgot what mine was, sir.
That's fine. I sent it to your mom. She'll give you a copy. Okay, everybody is set in that capacity. Let me come back into here. All right, so get out of this. Okay, so let's get into a conversation right out the gate. Let's go ahead and before we go into the specific ones, while you guys are thinking through that. Are you guys ready to go through them? George, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, George, give us a brief synopsis, like 2 minutes or less. Give us Caesar crossing the Rubicon River. Why is it significant? What's the
Sure.
historical background? Let's see it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so context, there were two factions. The Roman Republic was in like a political crisis. There was the Populares, which supported reform and like the common people. That was Julius Caesar's side. And there was the Optimates, which represented the conservative Senate elite. They were aligned with Pompey. Preceding events was Caesar had finished like a decade of military conquest in Gaul. And then the Senate, influenced by Pompey, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome without his legions. And then, of course, Caesar saw this as a threat. And then the key points for crossing the Rubicon, it was the northern boundary of Italy. The generals were forbidden to bring armies across it into Italy under the penalty of treason. So very, very serious. You absolutely are not allowed to cross. And then Caesar crossed the Rubicon with his army, and he was defying the Roman Senate's direct orders. So on top of the treason, the penalty of treason, he was also going directly against the Senate. So he knew this was pretty much an act of war. Of course, upon crossing, Caesar reportedly said, Alea Iatica, as the die is cast. It initiated a civil war between Caesars and the forces loyal to Pompey and the Senate. Then aftermath, so the civil war followed, which Caesar won, of course, and was appointed as dictator for life. And then the end of the Roman Republic, and it paved the way for the rise of the Roman Empire under Caesar's heir, Octavian. And then yes.
Very good. What the
So
major
yes, sir.
significance for us is it ended the Roman Republic. How long did the Roman Republic last? My memory is it's about 100 years in the city itself. The expanse of the Roman Republic doesn't go beyond that, but if you want to confirm that for me, that's helpful. All right, that's enough on that one. Good job, George. George, I also tasked you. That was the only one I gave you on that. All right, Par,
Yes, sir.
nice and loud. So pick me up. History of Roman warfare. How are the Romans conducting warfare in ancient times based on your research?
On what I researched, they were different compared to other nations like barbarians who just pillage and all that. Because for them, the three main things I've seen is that first thing, they had oaths that they'd have to swear both to their leaders and to their gods, which means that they had to be like trustworthy, and they'd always have to like keep their word. It's a really big part of the Roman army is diligence and like keeping your word. And second, the Romans, they used to have a diplomacy in war. Like they're like one of the first nations to ever do that. By like they would like send heralds telling people that they're about to start a war, and before they started a war, they make sure that they had all their targets marked. That way they didn't like kill innocent people. That way they had a specific set of people they wanted to target. And when they came to capturing cities, they would take a prisoners of war. They would usually enslave them, and civilians they'd either spare them or slave them depending on what their rules were that they set up before they started the war. So all in all, they were different from pretty much all the other nations because they used a lot more diplomacy and the treatment of prisoners of war instead of like killing and doing whatever, they just enslaved them is a lot more diplomatic.
Perfect. That's excellent. That is exactly the point of that research that I wanted to do. Comparatively, the barbarian cultures around them, what was different? How they fight warfare? We talked about this briefly last time.
They did whatever they wanted. They didn't really have any rules.
Yeah, it's ambush. It was surprise attacks. They'd burn the cities to the ground. They'd kill everybody, man, woman, child. No restraint. It was total war from first to last. That was generally all the ancient world, nearly all of the armies in the ancient world, no matter what civilization you look into. There are some exceptions. The one is Rome. I like to point out Rome in particular because they bring a degree of civilization to it, right? If you didn't capture that, basically it's like this. They assemble their army. They send a herald out front. They go, listen, we're coming. We got a big army. You kind of got two choices here. You can come out and fight us. We're happy to do that. Or you can join us. You want to join? Actually, usually they don't even say fight us. Would you care to join the empire voluntarily? Right? If you voluntarily join the empire, we don't kill you. And then you pay tribute. Your army becomes part of ours, and off we go. And if they do that, that's actually to their benefit because then they grow. Actually, Xerxes did that when he attempted to go into Greece. He attempted to actually recruit a lot of the Greeks. The ones he couldn't, of course, he just smashed them. But early ancient armies didn't do that. For the large part, they would attack their enemies unaware and defeat their states. The Romans considered that dishonorable. Very good. All right, so that's Roman warfare in general. Remember, and this is important, particularly when we're comparing and contrasting warfare over the ages, right? Very important to remember that most of the time when you're looking at, I'm trying to expand this so I can see it. Thank you. Very good. Warfare, right? It is brutal. So we look at Christian warfare. It's the only thing we've been exposed to really in America. The only warfare we've ever seen is a degree of Christianized warfare, right? And we're going to get into that a lot here in just a couple minutes. Okay, so Paul, I gave you that one. What was the other one I gave you? Roman warfare. Okay, so now we're fast forwarding quite a ways. Actually, hold that one. Let me come back to that one in a minute. Let's get into the rules of biblical warfare for the Israelites. What was different specifically that and let's go over some of the verses that we looked up that sets apart the rules for Israelite warfare. Go into it. Let's start with Brandon. You want to fire one off?
I don't know which one of these were before, but I think this is just like a biblical, like for I think both maybe, but don't be afraid of your enemies.
Okay. Do not fear. Where is that?
Deuteronomy.
Good. All right. Deuteronomy 20 is a great verse for a whole bunch of rules in Deuteronomy 20, but keep going.
If the army is bigger than you, don't be afraid because God is with you.
Mhm.
And the priest must come and speak to the army before you go into battle.
Let's pause on Deuteronomy 20 for just a minute. This is an important one. I want you to take some notes on this, okay? Deuteronomy 20. When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, I apologize. This is actually the King James. See, I'm going to pontificate in the King James. Just a little bear with me for a moment. I'll try to take out the thous and us. When you go into battle against your enemies, see horses and chariots, do not be afraid. Blah, blah, blah. It shall be well with you. Be fast forward. All right. The Lord is your God. Don't let your hearts fret. And the officer shall speak unto the people, saying, what man is there that hath built a house and has not dedicated it? Go and return to his house, lest he die in battle. So there's some exceptions. So here's the first question, is who's supposed to be in the army? That's the first question that comes into here. Who is supposed to be numbered among the fighting men? You have anything on your notes there, Brandon, before I hand it to you?
I had the ones that who should not be in the army.
Okay, so that was part of your note. Who's not? Go ahead and read off the list out of Deuteronomy 20, because that's what you're about to go through.
People that built a house that's not given to the Lord,
Yep.
and then planted a vineyard,
Plant a vineyard, haven't done a harvest out of it. What else?
if you're engaged,
You're engaged to be married. Good.
and the last one, that if anyone's afraid.
Or if you're afraid, right? So those are specifically excluded from going to battle, which is very interesting. Why does he exclude? In fact, he gives this specific statement. Why is that as fearful? What man is there that is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return unto his house, lest his brethren's heart faint as well as his. They don't want men who are cowards. Why? Because fear. What does fear do in an army? It spreads. That's right. It absolutely spreads. In fact, Stonewall Jackson was notorious for when he would, when they would capture the enemy, he would release the ones that were afraid. He'd send them back. He'd make sure he either didn't release or killed the brave ones. And like some of his men were showing mercy to the ones that fought well. I know fought great. Said, stop showing mercy to the guys that fight well. Kill them. Keep the cowards. Because when we send them back, they're going to be a curse to the enemy. Now Jackson was a little brutal at that point, but you get the idea. He recognized the significance of that. There's some other guys throughout history as well. Let's talk about what age are they counted among the fighting men. So at what age is somebody accounted to be a fighting man? Repeatedly in the Old Testament, it says you count them all males, age, anyone guess? 20 and up. Age 20 and up. Repeatedly in the Bible. They're counted by their men 20 and up. So essentially in that culture, if you were below 20, you were not quite a man, or at least not as far as going to war counts. You were not. They were, they trained their young men how to fight. Now here's a question. Keep going on this. So those are some of the rules. What are the rules that are also in here? I don't want to get sidetracked.
When you march to attack a city, first, before you attack it, you must make an offer for peace.
Okay.
Uh,
Yep. Read that. What's that verse? That's exactly correct.
I don't know which verse, but I know it's in Deuteronomy.
Yep. Deuteronomy 20. Yep. Go ahead.
If they take your offer for peace, all the people will be your slaves.
There it is. It's 11. And if it shall be no peace.
And
That's right.
And then if they don't take your offer, God says, kill all the men with your swords. And then take everything, take the women, children, and animals.
Okay. What kind of rules of warfare that is very reflective of what else we just talked about. The Romans. So the Romans are not far off of that model, which is very interesting, right? And here we have God specifically giving instructions to the Israelites to do precisely that. All right. So they go in, they offer peace. If they go peace, they're their slaves. Now, we can get into slavery later. What there's when we talk about biblical slavery, it's not quite what we were used to in this country. We had what's man chattel. So when you hear about, hey, they're going to take them as slaves, it's not forever. Once you become a slave, you have a maximum indenture time of 6 years, because on the 7th year you're freed. So it's not like, hey, I'm going to be a slave forever. Just bear that in mind. Okay, keep going.
And then leave nothing alive in the cities that God has given to you.
There's some of that. In some instances, this is where it's interesting, depending on where you read in the Old Testament, sometimes he says leave nothing alive if he's giving specific attacks. But here in Deuteronomy 20, where he's giving general rules of warfare, but the women and the little ones and the cattle and all that is in the city, even the spoil thereof, thou shalt take unto thyself. So they don't actually kill.
I think that except like the women, children, and animals, I think maybe it's talking about the men. Maybe.
Good.
And then the last one I have is if you surround and attack the city for a long period of time, do not destroy the trees. But I forget, because I didn't go into detail on that, so I forget the reasoning why he said that. But I know I put first.
I think it says, I have in here Deuteronomy 20:19 through 20. Number 20 says,
Nice and loud, Caleb.
only non-fruit bearing trees may be cut down for buildings. Siege.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Actually, it's So don't cut down fruit trees for whatever reason. Probably more so that you can take them as spoil. But obviously there's a special category of fruit bearing trees. Non-fruit bearing trees make good wood, better wood anyway. But that's another story. Okay, good, very good. Other things you're going to see throughout the Bible. Let's talk about this. If you read when, for example, when Joshua was going to take the Holy Land, in most cases, what are his instructions from God? Destroy everything, all of it. In fact, we even see, remember when Saul was told to go wipe out the Amalekites? Yeah, Amalekites. Do you remember what God said, what the instructions were? Saul got in a lot of trouble for this. He was told to kill them all. Women, and he gives specific instructions. Men, women, anything that breathes, even the cattle, the sheep, all that stuff, right? But what does Saul do? You remember? He keeps alive the best of the cattle and the sheep. He basically doesn't follow God's law. God sends Samuel. Samuel gets really upset with him. He even keeps the king alive, King Agag alive. Samuel cuts off Agag's head. He tells Samuel he's going to rip the kingdom from his hand because he didn't follow laws. So there are times specifically when total war was directed by God. There are times. But God was very specific about that, and he picked particular nations, right? There were particular nations where total war was executed. The rules in general for warfare were right here in Deuteronomy. That sounds pretty brutal, though, doesn't it? Right? Go into the city. Now, what is a city in the ancient times? Politically, what is a city? It's capital. More than that, we think of them as capitals, really. Usually a city was essentially a nation, a city-state. We talk about Greece, we talk about city-states. You read about, in the Old Testament, pretty much all of those kings are related around one city. Some of them may have multiple, but usually one city. When you're going to a city, you're talking to essentially a king of a city. So the king has the authority to make peace or war. Go up, you give him terms of peace. If he takes it, they'll be your slaves, quote unquote. If not, you're going to kill all of the males. Seems kind of brutal because you're killing them all. Quite frankly, the instructions would be kill all males. Not above a certain age. That means you have to kill small children. That seems harsh in our eyes, but what's the purpose of that? Why would God give instructions like kill boys?
Maybe like they want to get revenge.
Go ahead, Jensen. Come up here so they can hear you.
Snake's kind of like a snake, but or a turtle. You want to kill a baby turtle, so then they don't grow up to be a big turtle.
That's exactly correct. You kill the baby turtle, so they don't grow up to be big turtles. Very good. That's precisely right, because they remember what happened at the sack of their nation, right? They remember that, and eventually they will turn on you. Now, in God's case, when he's given instructions, it's a little bit more than that, but realize there's a point to this. If the nation will not surrender, you need show no mercy except to women and children, right? In fact, he says that. Hang on. The little ones. Let me back up. So he does say spare the little ones. So when we say the little children, where's that age line? I misquoted that. Where's the age line of little children? I'm not entirely sure. In Jewish custom, I think it's like 13 is like the magic number for whatever reason, 12, 13, when they do that's kind of the line. Incidentally, anybody know what age in Sparta they were inducted into military training? Into the agoge, what's it called? Yes, come here. Yes. Age 8, exactly. Very good. That's 2 for 2, Jensen. Good job. It was at age 8. That's really early but even at 8, by the way, the Spartan kids were already affected. Other things to note that are important in here. When and where were these? So if in Israel, the age requirement to be counted to the military is age 20, do we see anywhere in the Old Testament reference to how they're trained? I see no specific instructions. There's broadly saying, count them by their armies, right? We see, Psalm 24, train my fingers for fingers for battle, my hands for war, right? That's what we sing, right? That's that. All of that's on the back of your shirt. Turn your shirt around. Let me see. So I get the verse right. Psalm 144. Thank you. 144. 1. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my fingers for war. War in my hands for battle. Perfect. Or my hands for battle, my fingers for war. We don't see specific instructions on how that's done. But they're called, how are they organized? This is very important. How do the Israelites organize for war? Anybody know how they go up for battle?
Then they only have 11 of 12 tribes fighting.
Right?
Like they take like a certain amount from each tribe, and like you'd be like one person in charge of like so many people, and there's like it's like a chain of leadership, I guess.
You are on it 100%. That's it, Dean. Exactly. So there are 12 tribes, right? In Israel. They have 11 tribes that are counted for war. Why? What's the other tribe?
Probably
Tribe of Levi. What are they?
priests.
They're priests. Now, there's a couple of instances where even the priests fight, but that's not usually the case. So there's 11 tribes that are armed for war, right? And they go up by the tribe. And remember, we went back into, here it is right here, Exodus 18:21, where we talked about how the nation was elected representatives. So these are city states. What do we have? What's the form of government essentially in the Old Testament for Israel? What is it? More specifically, Democratic Republic. And the Democratic Republic is comprised of 12 different independent states. That's really key, right? And when they're called into war, each state provides its own army. That's really, really important in our history. It's really important now. How many city-states or how many states do we have?
50.
50 of them, right? 50 of them. Are there state armies in our country? What do we call them right now today? The National Guard. There's actually, go beyond that, there's also, every state really also has, what else? There's another service there. You have a militia. Both of those are actually organized military units. We don't use them so much because we got some professional soldiers that seem to be doing all the work for us, but that's not the design. And when you go further back in our history, we're going to hit this as soon as we hit here really shortly, within about 20 minutes, we're going to be into the War for American Independence. We're going to see that. But I want to get through the rules of warfare, because if you don't start with the rules of warfare, it's very difficult to get to know where we're going. Right? Let me just make sure. Hold on. Somebody called me twice. Want to make sure it's not one of our cadets trying to call in. No, it's not. It's two different people. Okay, good. Okay, so that's important. All right, what else do we have on the homework sheet? Okay, those are the rules of warfare. Do those rules seem? Any questions on those rules? Okay, very good. That's the key takeaways. Biblical rules of warfare. All right, let's go into, you guys read Vindicio contra Tyrannus. We did that. We talked about a Plymouth plantation. Anybody get a hold of a copy of that? What did you find out, chapters 1 through 4? Anything that jumped out at you?
Oh, not much like the summary. So exactly what it was, but basically they were in England, and it's just describing how they're being persecuted by the Church of England, King George's religion, and then they decided to leave. So they got Mayflower, and then they came over to America, and then I think the 4th chapter is just about them like setting up like a prostitution. So,
That's excellent. That's very good. What is really important, particularly about that book of Plymouth Plantation, you guys want to be able to have that kind of on the tip of your tongue when you're talking to people. Particularly when they're talking about, well, we were cruel to the Indians. Not at all true. There's some things we'll do around the 1800s. We'll get to that, but that's a couple hundred years forward of where we are for a moment. We weren't. We were very fair to them. We'll say, well, that's not true. So where do you read that? The answer is that it's not written. It's not there. There's no written history. How come there was no written history for the Indians prior to that?
didn't have anything to write.
They didn't have anything to write with other than some like carved stone, and more importantly, they didn't have what?
Language. Right.
They didn't have a written language, right? They had some hieroglyphs, more or less. They had some caves, but they didn't have a written language. It wasn't there. It didn't exist. When did they acquire a written language? Ironically, when the colonists came, we gave them one. We taught them to read and write, and then they could record their history. There's some other great things. So we went through that last time. I won't unpack that again. Okay, here we go. Plymouth Plantation, Mayflower Compact. We talked about that. Did you guys skim Liberty or Death by Patrick Henry? Okay, good. And the Declaration of Independence, which is what we're going to get into today. That's where we're gonna go for sure. All right. All right. George, you on? Chandler, what did I give you? Morality, legal. Okay. Chandler, what did you have on man's obedience to lawful orders and man's resistance to tyrants?
1 second. I'm going back to my truck.
Biblical
I was looking
extracts
some-
for that.
I'll clear the roof caulk real quick.
All right, do what you got to do. You clear it from a roof job. That's awesome. We'll come back to that in just a second. All right, so we're going to come back to
can-
his in just
I
a
can
second.
get it
Let me-
real quick. I'm getting right back into my truck and I got my computer.
Okay, we went through a lot of stuff last time. We went through the three ordained governments, which are the three governments. I'm gonna review this stuff. There are three governments ordained by God. They are government of the, I'll give the first one, church. Two more. Government of state. And government of home, or government of family. That's exactly correct. This is significant. The Bible speaks specifically to the authority of the state. It gives specific directions to the authority of the state. What authorities does it specifically give to the home, the families? There's commands given. The command, be fruitful and multiply. To whom was that given? To individual people. Has God repealed that mandate? No. Where does that come from? Is it the authority to make children is given from God to men and women, right? So the chain of command, as far as the family goes like this. Family. This is very, very important. Church. State. God. All right. Where does the family's chain of command go as a family? Who's their immediate authority?
State.
I need some more opinions. Got one opinion, and you're not real certain. Is it the state or is it God? What else? I need an opinion. Not even an opinion.
I think the God.
Okay, I got God. I got God, maybe the family, I got state. What do you think? To whom does God give all of the commands? Raise up a child, the way he's to go. Go ahead.
Church.
It's not get at church. The family. This is the chain of command. This is extremely important. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are the head of a family, as far as it goes for your children and the conduct of your family, the only person to whom you have to report to is God. Full stop. Right? Now, in other areas of your life, right? For example, as soon as you step off of your driveway and onto public property, now whom do you report to? Which just means the state. Yeah. So at that point, you as an individual, the state owns the public domain, right? Got it. Once I'm off my property, I'm in the public's domain. What does the church? What about the church? Their authorities.
Over the people that are in the church.
Yeah. We also have a requirement to serve the church as well, right? So we have a requirement here. There's a requirement to serve the state. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. We have a requirement to serve the church. But as far as our conduct of our family, that we don't, what this means is that the federal government or the state government has no authority to come into, for example, to tell you how to raise your children. They can't tell you legally, under God's morally, that you have to put your children in public school. That's a really, really key fundamental point. And now we can go through a lot of this. I got a whole other study I can do on that, that I did with Gary DeMar, God and Government. Excellent study. We can go at another time, but I just need you for a minute. Recognize that there's distinctions in each of these. Okay. There are limits here, here, and here. Okay, let's leave that. Okay, we went through Magna Carta. Let's start jumping into some stuff going forward now, just because we're a little behind. We're gonna get into some more stuff a little later on. Okay,
I can give my stuff now if you're ready.
you ready? Go for it.
Sure. I'll pull over real quick. Sorry. I wrote down 3 verses for each one that I found. I found 3 for man's obedience, to lawful orders.
Perfect.
Okay. And the first one's Romans 13, 1 through 2. It says, every person is in subjection to governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Resisting authority is oppressing God's obedience. Rulers
They're
are
established for what purpose? For your good, it says, right? Good,
Mhm.
excellent. Keep going.
says rulers are ministers of God, avengers who bring wrath on those who practice evil.
Okay, very good.
Therefore, submission is necessary not only to avoid wrath, but also for sorry, a little better, for conscience sake.
So they are, what's the purpose of the state in that verse? To punish what?
To
He said it.
punish evil.
To punish evil. That's key because we're about to go into a major discussion on Vindicae contra tyrannus. Gentlemen, if any history you study must begin at this critical juncture here. We are lawfully, morally required to obey our state leaders, provided what? Provided they're obeying God and they are punishing evil. That's key. It's a critical point. Pause right there. Go ahead, give me the other 2, Chandler. Give me 2 others real fast.
The next one is First Peter 2, 13 through 14. It says, submit yourself to the Lord's sake to every human instruction, whether to a king or as the one in authority,
Good.
or the governors as sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right.
Good.
And
All right.
then next one is Titus 3:1. Sorry, I'm having to look it up.
I got the First Peter. You're already out of it. Okay, go ahead. Let's go to you, Joe.
Titus 3:1 says, remind them to subject to rulers, to authorities, to be obedient to be ready for every good deed.
Perfect. So we're seeing repeatedly, obey, obey, obey. Now, let's go into the ones on rebel.
Okay. Acts 5:29 was one I had for man's obedience to tyrants.
Hmm?
And it says, but Peter and the apostles answered, we must obey God rather than man.
Very good. We must obey God rather than man. So wait a minute. He's clearly saying there's instances in which we will disobey because we have to obey God. So what is that specifically saying? Must obey God rather than man. In what instances do we disobey man?
Anytime that the person that's in man is not punishing evil, they're good. They're doing us to, they're telling us to do evil.
Perfect. That's really, really important. Keep going, Chandler. Give me another one.
Okay. Exodus 1:17 says, but the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the male children live.
Okay, do you guys remember this story in Exodus? Remember the command that Pharaoh gave? Go out and first of all, he killed all of the babies 2 years old and younger. He killed them all, right? Went out and killed them. And then he instructed the midwives that anytime a male child is to be born, what are they supposed to do? Kill the child, right? But they didn't do that. They knowingly didn't do it. They said, "Oh well, they come so fast. The Hebrew women, the labor comes so fast. We don't have time to get there and kill them." That wasn't true. They actually lied to Pharaoh. They would hide the children. The babies would be born. This is how Moses came about, right? Remember? They put Moses in the basket and he went to Pharaoh's daughter. You guys remember the story? Kind of, to some extent. Okay, so this is important because God calls that righteous. They are lying to the rulers in authority. Well, they're bearing false witness. That's a violation of the commandment. What's happening here? Are they acting lawfully or unlawfully? What do you think, Jensen? The Hebrew midwives that are hiding the Israelite children so they're not killed and lying about it, are they behaving good or bad? By protecting the children.
I'd say good.
Okay? So they're, go ahead.
Pharaoh.
Was that?
According to Pharaoh, though.
According to Pharaoh, it's unlawful, right? This is going to be a repeated theme throughout history. Once we get this point nailed down solid, we're going to be in good shape. Because now every time we analyze a situation through history, we're going to put it through this filter. But you need to remember some of these verses. The Hebrew midwives is a good one. First Peter, or it's Acts 5:2. We should obey God rather than man. What's the other one, Chandler?
The next one's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's in Daniel 3:16-18.
Okay.
Hold on, let me get it up
You
real
guys
quick.
remember the story? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
Yes, sir.
What happens? What do you tell them to do? Go ahead, Chandler. You want to set the stage? Or no, Jensen,
sir.
you want to set, go ahead. Jensen, set the stage. There you go. He told everybody, bow down, and when they sound the trumpet and the lyre and whatever else, you all got to worship. What did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do? They didn't bow down. King said, all right, what's going to happen to you guys? Bring in the fiery furnace. Right? And so he throws them in the fiery furnace. What happens when they throw them in the fiery furnace? Well, actually, what was their response to the king? This is the best response ever. You got it on there, Chandler? Do you have it?
Yes, sir.
What's
Sorry.
what's the Bible verse? Give me that one.
Okay. It says we do not need to give you an
What's the
answer
reference?
concerning.
What's the reference?
Oh, it's Daniel 3:16-18.
Daniel 3. Okay, go ahead.
It says Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up.
Perfect. Let me read it to you out of King James. I think it has a little bit more weight. Right?
Okay.
So Nebuchadnezzar says, are you going to worship? Either worship or I'm going to kill you. This is the reply. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, think about it. Even if God doesn't save us, this is what he's saying. Even if God doesn't save us, be it known unto thee, O king, we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image that thou hast set up. Think about that statement. Think about the act of faith here. Look, God can save us from your hand. But if he chooses not to, doesn't matter. We're not going to serve you. We're not going to disobey. So we see three counts of disobedience. I think we lost George, so I'm going to go ahead and log off that thing for a second. See if he comes back on that. Okay. So even if they will not, they stay faithful, right? That's really key. Let me see if I get George back on the line directly here. One second. Having all kinds of communications issues today. Let's see what happens. Okay. So the takeaway is this. Let's get into who had St. Bartholomew Day massacre? Okay. Hold all of that in the back of your mind, and let's go into the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre Dean, give us a rundown, nice and loud, so we can pick it up on speaker over here.
It happened in August of 1572 and is in France, where a bunch of Huguenots, which were Protestants, were massacred by the Catholics,
Mhm.
and showed how divided France was between the two groups of religion and how serious the conflicts between them came. There was a wedding between Henry of Navarre, I don't know how to say that,
Okay.
Huguenot leader,
Uh-huh.
and Margaret of Valois, who was supposed to bring peace. Instead, it made Catholics scared, and they decided to attack the Huguenots who were in Paris at the wedding. And August 23rd, a bunch of the Huguenots were killed, and the numbers they vary a lot depending on the sources.
Yep.
And a bunch of mobs were going through the streets, and the Protestants, guess the mobs were attacking the Protestants, which were the Huguenots, and it's just a complete massacre. They weren't expecting any of this, and the aftermath of it was it put a line between the Catholics and the Protestants, and it led to even more fighting in France between the two religions, and it even drew attention from other countries, and a lot of the Huguenots fled, or they had to like live in fear of persecution from the Catholic Church, and it put a line between the two religions.
Excellent. Okay, so that's the takeaway. Not only is it between what happens between the Catholics and the Protestants. All right, in a really quick nutshell, what's the difference between Catholicism and Christianity? Just really briefly, Catholicism.
Catholics believe in a lot of extra rules, and also that there's a purgatory, you have to pay for your sins before you go to heaven.
Right. So basically, it's works. It's your salvation is through works. Jesus is not enough. You need Jesus plus works to get to heaven. Right. That's the gist of it. Christianity basically says, nope, you can't earn your way into heaven. Only way into heaven is Jesus, just Jesus, nothing else. Right. So there's some conflict in this space. Right. So the conflict kicks off, but what happens is the French crown stands behind the Catholic Church. Who's the head of the Catholic Church? Pope, right? But the French crown is putting the weight behind it and supporting the mobs who kill all these Protestants. 30,000 of them count. These are the numbers I've heard. But yeah, right. They probably vary greatly. That's a good point, Dean. Very good point. But now the question is, coming out of the St. Bartholomew Day massacre is this question. By what authority does the King of France massacre the Huguenots? Does he have the authority to do that? I got one no. What else? Might you consider yes? Does he have that authority? Enter a document now and a debate. This is a document I want to discuss. The Decai Cultura Tyrannis. Out of this, a debate sparks off for the next probably, when is this thing published? 7 years. The next 7 years from 1572 to 1579. Over that 7-year period, there's this roiling debate back and forth. Because it's not just a fact, yes, the Protestants, of course, are all ticked off because Catholics massacred them. Fair enough. Set that part aside for me. There's a second debate that's coming with that, which is not only is it Catholic Protestant, but the bigger debate is, wait a minute, the crown supported the Catholics to do this. By what authority does this king, or quite frankly, any king, do that? As soon as that discussion came up, whose authority is being challenged? All kings. And specifically, what kings are most important in this equation? There's 2 of them, maybe 3. What 3 kings are being challenged in specific by this document? King of France, King of England, at least one more. Pretty powerful ones. Well, there's others, but King of Spain. Ting, ting, ting. Three monarchs are under fire on this point. Because now the question is, should they be resistant? Now here's the debate. What's the central thrust? What was the argument of the French crown for justification? Where does the French crown or any king get their authority? At least these kings. Let me back up. There's 2 ways they can get authority, right? They can give 1 of 2 answers. King's authority comes from only 1 of 2 places. What are the two options? Option number one.
Oh.
Behind this door is what?
God.
God. Fair enough. Right? Where did King David get his authority? From God. God ordained him. Where did King Saul get his authority? God ordained him. Where did a whole bunch of the King Josiah from God, right? Go through the kings in the Old Testament. A lot of them are bad kings. About 2/3 of them are bad kings. Where did they get their authority? From what? Well, from God. They were ordained by the prophets. But he gave them a series of kings. Hey, oh, you're here.
I did. I was gonna be home way before that, and I was
Oh, okay.
only in Middletown, so.
You want to grab him? All right, fantastic.
Right.
He's right in there. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you, Barb. Okay, so these are the kings. God, what's his other option? He's got another option. Actually, he's got two other options, technically.
Dominance in war, like taking over a country.
Yeah, so he can appeal to power. Right? And power, as Mao Zedong like to say, flows from the barrel of a gun. That's important. He can say, well, I don't need God. I've got my own authority. Jensen or Nick, you heading out, buddy? Come give me a hug. You got your stuff? Or is your stuff in the car? Can you walk down and help him get his stuff out here? Jensen, we'll leave this out of the car. Make sure there's anything back there. Okay. What's his third option? There's one other place he could get it from.
Being born into it.
Well, yeah, but that's how it's true, but he's either established power from God, the people, from man. Those are his three options. God, man, or just raw power, right? Most of the kings in the ancient world, where did they get their authority? Most of them, set aside the Israelites, where did they get their authority from?
Oh.
Raw power. Biggest guy, biggest army, I'm in charge. Anybody want to challenge me? I've got 10,000 men, you've got 100. What do you say? Want to have it out? That's how it went, right? That's just raw power. That's how it went, quite frankly. But if you're appealing to God, if you appeal to God, what are the rules? Who's required to submit? If the king is appointed by God, what's the requirement for us?
You have to follow him as honesty. It's all God.
We have to obey. We are required to obey. Where do we see this example in the Bible specifically? You think of an example where someone very closely obeys, even though the king's somewhat of a tyrant. And I can think several, but one very poignant one. He killed the giant. There's a hint. King David. Who does he obey? True, but what king is over him?
Oh, Saul.
King Saul. And what's Saul doing, actually, quite frankly? And not only is he not obeying, what else is he doing? He's trying to kill David. And David will not kill him because he's God's ordained. So we have a requirement to obedience, provided what? And this is the argument in Vindicia contra Tyrannus. Provided they're obeying God. Right? That's the takeaway thing. There we go. Here's the thrust of Vindicae contra Tyrannus. Is the door swings both ways. The kings in Europe were Christian kings. So all of them, King of Spain, the King of England, and the King of France, probably the King of Denmark as well, and some others, but those three in particular claim to be ordained by God. Vindicio contra Tyrannus said, fantastic. If you are ordained by God, as long as you're following God's laws, we are bound to obey you. With me? When you don't follow God's laws, what are we required to do? Not obey. Resist. That's key. That's very key. Any questions on this point? Because we could spend quite some time discussing this, or you could just say, okay, I'm good enough with it, we can move on. This is critical. Everybody's good with this? Okay, I see some nods, and I see some people that look like they might be completely lost. All right, that's fine. All right, we went through the Mayflower Compact, right, last time? Okay. Now it's going to get fun. You guys have your Patriots Handbook with you, yes? Let me go grab mine.
I'll take a stop. I can go get it.
There's a whole stack of them. Go pick one out. Pick one you like. Okay. All right, actually. All right. Before we get into Declaration of Independence, we got to talk about something now. I'm going to pull up a video clip. So while we talk about this, who knows anything about the French and Indian War? Go ahead, Jensen. Give it to me. Give it to me. That's correct. Let me get out some of the stuff so I can. Those are the things.
Guns, which
Yeah, you're on it. You're going, buddy. Keep going.
which basically have the Indians, like convince the Indians
Close some stuff so I can. All right.
to like go on their side.
The Mohicans. Mohicans. Ambushing. Let's see. Let's see if I can find this. It's gonna be an important scene. So we talk about videos. Where is it? I want to go. British ambush scene. There's a battle that's captured in this movie. I want to make sure. Okay, there it is. Okay. I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna start this thing so it can buffer for a second. We're gonna pause. Okay. I'm gonna let that buffer for a second. All right, so let me hang on. Let me come out of here for a second before we get into this. Let me lay the stage for you. Okay, let me get into another picture. Let's see. Map of colonial America circa 1756. See if I find a good map you guys can see. Oops. No, I don't want directions. Keeps wanting to give me directions. Okay. American map, 1756. Go to images. There you go. Thank you. Okay. Actually, this is pretty good. This is actually as silly as this map is. It's probably, oh, here you go. This is a better map. Perfect. Okay, this is a very good map. Let's take a look at this map. Once you guys understand what we're looking at, making sure I'm capturing this on the video feed. Quick peek. Okay. You guys should be capturing this on the video feed. Okay, let me go back to this. All right, everybody see this map up there? Can you guys identify the different boundaries on here? Okay. See all the red there on this eastern coast of the United States? That's essentially the beginnings of the 13 colonies of the United States. You can see it goes from Georgia on up to Massachusetts in the north. The rest of it, which is Maine, that early part of Canada into Quebec and Montreal, all across Kentucky, Louisiana, the Midwest, all the way out to the Rocky Mountains, is French territory. Anybody know, by the way, just quick fast forward, when this territory becomes American in our history? Louisiana Purchase. So that's all French. Now, what's there at the moment? 1756. What's out in all this territory? Whole bunch of nothing. Whole lot of nothing. Let's go back a little further in history. How did Native Americans get to America in the first place? We want to venture a guess how they got here. Well, all the way back after the flood, you can unpack the flood a little bit. There were land bridges that existed before the water level rose. water level rose, there's ice age. People were crossing into, so the people were here, had been here for 4,000 years before we ever, or 3,000 years before we ever got here. Right, there they are. Okay, all of the yellow territory, who's that belong to? Spain. Very good. It belongs to Spain. That's all Spanish territory. They have Florida, they got Mexico, parts of Texas, right? And nobody at the moment owned the Oregon territory, right? That's all kind of out there. So, but those are major powers. Here's what happens. The British or the English are sending over a lot of colonists. And those colonists are having children and expanding. What about the French? Not so much, right? They're not expanding quite as far. So the English, there's some dispute as to where the boundary is between the English and the French territories. But the English are venturing over the top of the Appalachian Mountains and getting into these territories down here in, in Kentucky, West Virginia, those territories. And the French don't like that. So the French, during that time, what's our relationship like with the Indians? What's our initial relationship like with the Indians? Mostly pretty good. We have good relations with most of the tribes. There's some bad tribes out there. By the way, what's the relationships between the Indians, between Indians and other Indians? Yeah, pretty bad, right? And when they find each other, a lot of times they just wipe each other out, right? They commit total warfare, undistinguished. It's vicious, it's brutal. But we aid some of we make good friends with some of these tribes. Particularly some of the New England tribes. Later in life, we ally ourselves with the Cherokee. But we'll get into that later. So we make good allies with them. But the French have a lot more. They have the Shawnee Indians and some others that they're allied with. And they decide that the English are getting a little too uppity. They start a war. The war really begins. There's already some friction between England and France, and the war starts in America. French and Indian War. Now, here's the thing that's interesting that happens. The French, recruit. Where is it? They recruit, where are the Indians they recruit? I forget the name of them. They're on here. Should be on the list. There's a battle called the Battle of Monongahela, and we're about to see it. General Braddock is an English commander. The English send over 2,300 of the finest troops England has to offer. 1,200 of them, under the command of General Braddock, march west to head toward Fort Duquesne, which is in here, and Fort Duquesne and another one. But they head west, and they have with them a colonel from the American militia. Anybody know the name of the colonel that accompanies them in this battle? Starts with a W. GW. Well, George Washington. He's the aide de camp. He becomes the aide de camp. And George Washington has made some Indian ally friends, right? He's got some Indian allies who he's made friends with over time. And he's sending his scouts out. The British are marching in a nice, neat column down the road. And his scouts come back and go, there's some Indians up ahead, and they're going to ambush us. So Washington tells Braddock, sir, we need to, send out some flankers and deploy and slow down because we're about to get ambushed by the Indians. Braddock's like, we don't care about no Indians. Indians don't know how to fight. We're the British. We're the finest military on the planet. These stupid Indians have no idea what they're doing. Why are we worried about Indians? And Washington tells them, sir, you ever fight Indians before? Braddock says, I don't really care about Indians. He goes, yeah, you have no idea. These guys are tough. They're ruthless. And you're fighting in the woods, which is their home territory. This is how they fight. They're very good at fighting in their own backyard. But Braddock says, forget it. We're marching forward. There's 1,200 of us. How many Indians could there possibly be in the first place? And this is a good deal of what it looks like. Let's see if I can pull it up. See if the scene goes the way I want this scene to go. Hopefully this goes far enough back into the scene. Yep. You see that okay? That's General Washington there, I think. think this is it. No, this is not it. This is the surrender at Vicksburg and the visitors. I think. Nope, this is not it. I think. Let me see if this is it. This might be it. This is similar to it. Let's just fast forward here for a minute. This is not quite the battle, but this very much depicts what the battle would have been like. But they wouldn't have had all these women and children. They put some artistic license into this, but this essentially is the battle. Imagine being the British in this fight.
French and stuff.
Yep, that's the French allied Indians. Again, this is a dramatization of something similar to battle, but it's supposed to depict something similar to battle. I get hit. All right, you guys get the idea. Let me tell you what really happened in the battle. This is the story of the rest of the battle. Okay, the battle kicks off. 1,200 British regular, 100 or 1,300 British regular, 100 American colonist militia, and amongst whom is George Washington. Every single of the officers, I believe there's 88 of them, if I remember correctly. Every single British officer is killed or wounded, with the exception of George Washington. All of them. The French and the British, there's also French soldiers in the actual battle that are also assisting the Indians. Imagine the Indians unleashing the arrows, right? They're shooting arrows at them, or killing the British. The British are trying to form line, form square, anything they can to fight these French and Indians. There's not as many French and Indians. There's something on the order of just a couple hundred of them, 200 or 300 of them. But they're hiding behind the trees. The British are out in the open, and the Indians are excellent marksmen. And they just start picking off the officers in the opening volleys. George Washington himself is riding down the lines on these guys. Braddock, the last command that General Braddock gives before he's killed, what's that? Okay, go ahead and tell me what you think you remember.
All I remember is since General Washington made out of time, didn't let some of the Indians go to Christianity because we saw
Sort of down the line. That's way few, but you're correct. They fire at George Washington himself. Many years later, George Washington meets an Indian chief who shares the story. He'd ordered his men. He said his men were excellent marksmen. They fired at George Washington 17 times. 17 times. At the end of the battle, he'd had 2 horses shot out from underneath him, and his cloak had 4 bullet holes. But he was untouched. Last command that General Braddock gave was to withdraw. Within moments of giving the command to withdraw, he himself was shot and mortally wounded. George Washington organizes and is able to rally the British and withdraw them from the field. And in so doing, he saves the British army. They still take some pretty heavy casualties. I think they take like 200 or 300 losses, but he saves the bulk of the army. Now, the rest of the war goes on to be fought like this. The British respond to this by sending the British Navy. British Navy is very impressive, and they blockade and they cut off the French supplies, right? So they just basically start attacking French shipping. They cut off the French supplies, and once they do, the American forces gain their guerrilla warfighting skills. An organization called Rogers Rangers is built in this time frame. And they're able to, with overwhelming number of forces, they are able to seize the French forts and force the French to surrender. When the French surrender, it ends the French and American War, French and Indian War, and they have to lose a bunch of territory. Most of the territory that they lose, by the way, let me go back into this map again. Oh my goodness. Get this thing go out of the way. I'm gonna make this go out of the way. Whatever, just open the file. Good enough. Okay. The territory that they lose is mostly they lose the northern parts of Canada up there, and they lose some of the territory west of the Appalachians in the at the end of the war, because they can't sustain it. However, the war was costly. And the British Crown then begins to say things like, all right, well, we need to collect some taxes to pay for the war we just fought. The American legislature is paying those taxes. They raise taxes voluntarily under the legislatures. Let me stop sharing. Let me just close this screen for a second. Take this off of here. Close all those tabs. Yep, thank you very much. But Parliament begins to pass other taxes. Okay, so let's go into that for a second. Open up, find the Declaration of Independence. Open up your Patriot's Handbook. Let's go to the Declaration of Independence. Page 62 on mine. Probably page 62 in yours too, Jens. Declaration of Independence. It's not in alphabetical order. It's in historical order. Somebody want to read the heading on this?
June 9th, 1776, the Continental Congress accepted a resolution of Virginia Delegate Richard Henry Lee appointing a committee to draft a declaration of secession from the dominions of the English king in Parliament. On June 29th, the committee was of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston, presented their draft for debate and
And a
vote. On July 4th, an amended version of that draft was accepted. The war had been raging out more than a year, had finally driven the reluctant revolutionaries to
several ties. Yeah.
several ties with their motherland.
Okay, let's set the stage. How many of you have been reading Rise to Rebellion? You've been listening. Where does it start? Have you been able to get into it at all, Caleb? Or you didn't have the book? You don't like it. By the way, the reason I give you these books from like Jeff Shara and Michael Shara, they're excellent history, but it's entertaining. He does it he puts it into a novel format, and he makes them into live characters. He gives some makes them three-dimensional, makes them real instead of dry history. Right? You with me? Okay. So let's talk about what's going on in America. What are some of the things that happen between the end of the French and Indian War, 1763 and 1776? What are the under the Mayflower Compact, how is the government in America supposed to be organized? Who's the report to? Each of the colonies have their own legislature. Colonial legislatures. How are these guys chosen?
They like,
They're elected by the states. Each of these, well, they're not states yet, but yeah, each of the colonies have their own legislatures. And what do these legislatures do? Not quite. What do they do? What was the end of the Mayflower Compact? Let's create bodies that'll help govern one another, right? They pass laws. The Massachusetts legislature passes laws in Massachusetts. The Virginia legislature passes laws in Virginia. The North Carolina, South Carolina, right on down the line, right? The various legislatures are passing laws for their own areas. But what's happening? What happened when they pass a law? Where does that law go? Where does it go to be ratified? It's to the king to be ratified. But where's the king sending it?
Parliament.
To Parliament. And then what's Parliament doing with it? Anybody know? Ripping it up, throwing it away. They could care less about colonial laws. They're passing their own laws. They believe that America is like all the other colonies. The British will tell them exactly what to do. The British will make the laws for them. And all they have to do is obey them. So they're sending these various laws over, and they're creating taxes. They create the Stamp Act, which creates a law, which creates a tax on stamps. They create the Tea Act, which creates a tax on tea. Actually, they even make it better than that. It gets better than that. They not only they create a Tea Act, they actually, to make it more palatable, they're selling the tea cheaply here in America to make it more cost effective to buy the tea. But what's the problem? Do the Americans have a problem paying the taxes?
No.
No. What's their problem? What's their
Can't represent themselves, probably.
right? Or more specifically, they don't want to represent themselves in Parliament. As Patrick Henry said, the delegates of Parliament have no more authority over us to tax us than do the citizens of the moon. They have no authority over the citizens of the moon. They have no authority over us. We govern ourselves. Only the king can veto one of our laws. But the king of England at the time, King George III, is being very quiet. Actually, he's not being quiet. He's specifically choosing not to step in on behalf of the colonists. He's telling Parliament, you keep issuing orders and you tell them what to do until they learn that they report to the Parliament and not to me. The colonists keep saying, no, we report to the king. So finally, the colonists stop paying the taxes. Like, we're not going to pay the taxes. It's not going to do it. The Stamp Act. They have a hard time enforcing the Stamp Act. The British complain about it. What's the British complaint? What are they complaining about? If you're a British citizen and Americans aren't paying the Stamp Act tax, what would be your complaint about Americans? They're not paying their taxes. Why should they pay their taxes? Because what did they just get done doing for America? We just fought a war for you guys. We beat the French, who were sending the Indians to attack your colonies. We came and helped you, sent our soldiers over to die for you, and you won't pay us tax? You see their concern? That's how they see it. What's the Americans' point of view? Oh, we're paying your taxes, but we're not going to pay it through a stamp tax. We're collecting taxes and we're sending them over. If you want more taxes, we'll collect more taxes, but we'll do it, not you. That's the whole debate. It's not about, by the way, anybody want to guess how much the tax was, this great tax over which that England had passed on? Anybody want to guess how much the amount was?
One.
2.5%. 2.5% tax. Do you think the amount bothered them? No, the amount was extremely reasonable. I mean, what are we paying taxes today? 50% by the time you add up, individual income tax. That's 50. It might become that. Individual income tax, sales tax, property taxes. You add up all the taxes you pay. Yeah, you might be paying half of your income. That's insane, by the way. That's completely insane. So this was a very reasonable tax they're requesting. But the principle was Yeah, you can ask all the tax you want. We're not paying it. If you want a tax, simply say America. Have the king come out and say, America, we need you to collect a 10% tax. If the king would have said that, what would have happened? Legislatures would have gone out and go, man, you got it, sir. We'll collect a 10% tax. We'll do it, not Parliament. Here's how we'll do it. Then they'll pick whatever they're going to tax. We're going to tax tea. We're going to tax stamps. We're going to tax, I don't know, wagons or whatever, food, whatever they want to tax. They're going to tax stuff and raise it. But Parliament was insisting that they had the authority to tax the Americans. So since the Americans wouldn't cooperate, what was the next step that the British took? What did they do next?
Then when they went into America, so they put soldiers in America.
They put soldiers in America. Not only did they bring soldiers to America, they passed the Quartering Act. Anybody know what that means?
Soldiers who live in their houses, so.
That's right. Not like they're invited, not like they knocked the door and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you mind if we shack up here? By the way, some of the Tories were hospitable, so sure you put some soldiers here. More specifically, they open the door, say, hey, knock, knock, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're taking over your house. We're gonna take your bedroom, so you guys can be out here. And in some cases, they take over as the head of the household. So, Mr. Jones, you're gonna sleep out there. I'm gonna sleep in the bedroom with your wife, and you can put all the rest of the details together, right? You get the idea. This is a brutal action. Not the first time in English history. When else was this done? We talked about this last time. Primo Nocte, right? All that sort of stuff. So it's they're stepping in and they're quartering British soldiers. So what happens next is the tensions go. It starts in Boston, Massachusetts. The tensions start to get hot. And there's a thing called the Boston Massacre. Who knows anything about it? Tell me about the Boston Massacre, Jesse. Lobsterbacks, remember? Yeah, that's the one. Yep, that was the name of the character they created in the book. He's the unfortunate British soldier that's at the front of the compound, the British compound in Boston. Handful of them, largely teenagers.
Oh,
So yeah, they're throwing snowballs at the British soldiers. Calling them names, lobsterbacks. They're fixing to throw rocks at them next. You're a British soldier. Might have been a brick. There's some discussion that, they start with snowballs. You can imagine the scene, right? Here's some British soldiers. You're guarding the gate. Tensions are hot. The Americans don't like the British don't like the Americans. There's already this tension. The flames are being fueled. And all of a sudden, these teenagers go out, they whip some snowballs. And when one of them picks up a rock, throws a rock at it, and they're calling them lobsterbacks. Why do they call them lobsterbacks? They're wearing red jackets, right? They look like lobsters, I suppose, And that's probably pretty true. They probably look like lobsters. All right, so they do that. They're throwing these snowballs and rocks, and all of a sudden it gets more and more chaotic. Somebody might have thrown a brick, and what do the British do? Somebody shoots. Yeah, first of all, they threaten. They back up, they threaten, they got bayonets on, somebody shoots, and then a whole volley goes off. Now, they kill 5 Americans. They call it a massacre. Probably a stretch, but they call it a massacre. They label it a massacre. Why? Why do the American newspapers label a massacre?
So it became propaganda.
Propaganda, exactly correct. Now there's truth behind it. Obviously, there was, a wrongful death. There's some question as to whether or not the captain ordered it and whatnot, but set that aside, they have the Boston Massacre. Well, that doesn't go very well. After that, they then bring the first shipment of English tea comes into harbor. Comes into Boston Harbor. And what happens to this English tea? It's stuck in port. The Americans won't offload it. They refuse to let it be offloaded. Why? It's supposed to be taxed. This tea is going to be taxed. By the way, a great event happens at this point. Actually, not just yet. We'll get to it in just a second. They want to tax this tea, so the Americans won't offload it. The British ship commander has to offload this tea, but none of the Americans will come out and offload it. He's not allowed to leave the harbor. He's got 30 days to offload this. Otherwise, he's gonna get in trouble by the British. So he's kind of stuck. He can't get his tea off the ship. He can't take it back out to sea. He doesn't know what to do. So in the middle of the night, a handful of Americans led by, anybody know who? Samuel Adams. Anybody seen his beer?
Yeah.
This is why his beer is famous, because this is the event that gives him notoriety. Sam Adams leads a handful of, I think it's like 30 some odd men. They dress themselves up as what? These guys, right? They get the little Indian outfits on. They actually look like really silly Indians. They don't even do a good job, right? They put on the face paint, they put on the feathers and whatnot, and they come up to the ship. And the ship captain sees them, and they get up there and they very politely, as politely as they can, say, "Captain, if you cooperate, nobody gets hurt." The captain's like, "Well, what's going on?" So, "We need to see your cargo." And they start dumping the tea over. The captain's like, he's actually relieved. He's like, "Awesome. This helps him out. He's offloading his tea. They broke the stalemate because they knew the captain would get in trouble. The British were going to land, so they just threw the tea overboard. Boston Tea Party. They take these big boxes of tea, about yay big, hundreds of them, toss them into the ocean. Right? Let me give you a song. Hang on a second. Let me give you a song about this. Yeah, we did. Oops. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna play a song for you. This is a song of the time about this action that occurs. Let me find it. Revolutionary tea. Find it this way. Hang on one second. Hang with me, guys. Don't lose me yet. Here we go. Listen to this song.
There was an old lady lived over the sea, and she was an island queen. Her daughter lived off in a new country with an ocean of water between.
This was written back right shortly after the Boston Tea Party. The old lady who lives over the sea is who? It's England, yeah, or King George, same thing. And she lives over the sea, and who's she? The daughter is America. Listen to the song.
There was an old lady lived over the sea, and she was an island queen. Her daughter lived off in a new country with an ocean of water between. With an ocean of water between. The old lady's pockets were filled with gold, but never contented was she. She called on her daughter to pay her a tax of threepence a pound on her tea. Oh, threepence a pound on her tea. Now, mother, dear mother, the daughter replied, I shan't do the thing that you ax. I'm willing to pay a fair price for the tea, but never the threepenny tax. But never the threepenny tax.
We'll pay for the tea, they won't pay for the tax.
You shall, quoth the mother, and reddened with rage, for you're my own daughter, you see. And sure 'tis quite proper the daughter should pay her mother a tax on her tea. Her mother a tax on her tea. And so the old lady her servant called in and packed off a budget of tea. And eager for threepence a pound, she put in enough for a large family. Enough for a large family.
Shipping off all this tea to America to get their tax. They actually did it nicely. They cut out the middleman. They're trying to give discounted tea, just so they could prove the point that we're in charge. Just pay the tea tax, so you're bowing the knee. All right, we're not going to bow the knee. Here we go. It's almost over.
She ordered her servants to bring home the tax, declaring her child should obey. Or old as she was and almost woman grown, she'd half whip her life away. She'd half whip her life away. The tea was conveyed to the daughter's own door, all down by the ocean side. And the bouncing girl poured out every pound in the dark and boiling tide. In the dark and boiling tide. And then she called out to the island queen, "Oh, mother, dear mother," quoth she, "your tea you may have when 'tis steeped enough, but never a tax from me, but never a tax from me."
A little funny because you know what it means to steep her tea? When you put it in water and it's ready to be drunk. It's you can drink it. So you can have your tea. It's in the water. It should be good to drink now because they dropped it in the ocean, right? The tea's good to go. They dumped it in the tea. Incidentally, it was at this point that the colonists stopped drinking tea. And what did they drink? That they drink to this day. Coffee.
Beer.
Why did they drink coffee? Not only to prove a point, but where does coffee come from? What's that? Central America. What empire did Central America at the time belong to? The Spanish. They said, fine, we're not going to drink English tea. We won't drink French tea because we don't like them either, right? But we're going to drink Spanish coffee. And so they started importing Spanish coffee just to kind of go, right? One of those. Okay, so now let's get into it. Declaration of Independence was drafted when? Was passed? July, let me know. Yes. What year? July 4th, 1776. When was the first battle of the war? 1775. What battle occurred in 1775? What's the first one? Bunker Hill. There's one actually before that. There's two battles. They come right next to each other.
What was the one before?
Is that?
What was the one before?
1776, 1775. The battles of Bunker and Breed's Hill. Anybody know who, let me find it, Paul Revere is? Turn to page 52. So let's see what happens. As things get worse and worse, actually, let me back up. The Massachusetts, you guys need a break? Everybody good? Okay, let's keep talking. Massachusetts decides to stand up to the British. Okay, they're standing up to the British. Now, as they're doing so, they're arming the colonists. So think guys with guns, right? So they're getting guns, they're getting gunpowder, and outside of the city of Boston, the colonists are preparing for war. That's not good for the British. They're like, okay, this needs to come to an end. So the British are going to do what? They're going to go out, and what's the first thing they're going to try to do? Two things they're going to try to accomplish very quickly. They want to disarm the Americans. So they're going to go find their powder stores. Back in that day, you had to have powder. It was stored in big barrels. And there's a bunch of them stored in a place called Lexington. So it's in Lexington. And they also wanted to arrest the leaders of the underground movement. These guys were called the Sons of Liberty. This was Samuel Adams was in this group. Who else was in it? I don't know the names of them, but let's go with Samuel Adams for just a minute. Patrick Henry was in this group. There were other guys that were the Sons of Liberty that were kind of inciting the people that, look, we need to put an end to this. We need to clarify the British rule. So they're going to launch a midnight raid. They're going to step off really, really early in the morning, right? Because they can't fight at night, but they're going to step off on a march to get to Lexington and Concord. So they're there in the crack of dawn before any of the militia could assemble. They're going to seize the gunpowder. They're going to capture Samuel Adams and some of the other leaders of the Sons of Liberty and be in and out. It's a raid. The English send, I believe it's some 1,500 troops or so. They send off 500 men, sizable force, including British Marines. But they step off. Now let's talk about the British Army. Remember something. The British Empire is at its absolute zenith. How big is the British Empire in 1775? How big? It's big.
50% of the world.
One,
It covers probably half the world, third of the earth at least.
yeah, a third, 1/3.
Let me give you a world map just so you can get a sense of just how big the British Empire is at the start of the war. They owned essentially a portion of North America. They owned the better part, their colonies spread over Africa, England, Southeast Asia, Australia, Canada. It's a massive empire. Let's see. World map. Actually, here we go. Better yet, British Empire, 1776 map. See if I can find one. Show how big the British Empire was. There you go. Look at that file. It's probably a little bigger than this because at some point they obtained large chunks of Africa as colonies. So they get all of this, get some of this, all of that there. They get India, a large portion of Southeast Asia, and Australia. Somewhere between a third and half the earth becomes part of the British Empire. Think about the extent of the British Empire. No empire on earth has come anywhere close to that. Even the Roman Empire, for all its vaunt and talk, wasn't even close to the scope and scale of the size of the British Empire. Thing's huge. Okay. So the British Empire is controlled primarily by the British Navy. That's their most powerful asset. They can sail around the world. They can bring battleships. They can pick up British soldiers and take them everywhere. Now, what is it? What's the main weapon of the day? The musket. How accurate is it? Yeah. If I'm shooting at that tree right outside the window there, that's probably what, 40 yards, 25, 30 yards. If I'm firing at that tree and I'm trying to hit, like if Caleb were out there sitting in that tree and I'm trying to hit him, I might hit near him. Chance I could hit him. Might miss him by a couple feet to one side or another because all it does is it throws that ball out of the end of that barrel and it goes. Anything beyond about 25 yards, it's not very accurate. But it's accurate if I'm firing at a few guys. If you got 3 or 4 guys together, I'll hit one of them. That's the idea. So what they would do is they would mass them all together. Like if we get enough of these all firing in one direction, we're going to hit something. Something's going to die. Particularly if they're all coming in a mass toward us. But what was the British soldiers' primary weapon? What was it that would strike fear in the heart of America and anybody else?
Bayonet.
The bayonet. You fix that bayonet on the end of a rifle. Imagine this command. They're on the line. You're an undisciplined. You're not really an army. And you're facing a trained army. And all of a sudden they give the command, fight! Bayonets! And in one clean motion, all of them simultaneously pull out, and they're looking at you steely-eyed. And that's how you hear it. If you've ever heard bayonets get fixed, we used to have to do it as a drill with Marines, and there's a few times you can do it for riot control. They tried it. I got a friend of mine had to do it. He actually killed some people in Cuba and Haiti years ago. And they fixed bayonets. And if you raise that thing into the charged position, you will terrify your enemy. And the Americans, most of the colonial militia, they didn't have bayonet studs. They couldn't put bayonets on the end of the weapons. Only thing they could do is turn their musket around and turn it into a club. They had no response to the bayonet. They couldn't handle the bayonet. And so the British knew if they could close to bayonet range, they would defeat any enemy on the planet. Anybody. As long as they could get within bayonet range. Right? How close do you have to get within bayonet range? Probably 25 yards, and then you give the order, charge bayonet, and then they go into attack. It's over. If you get it to bayonet range, the British are going to win. You cannot beat them in hand-to-hand combat. Right? They're not the first army in the world to understand that. But if they could get through that, get across the field to you, they will kill you. And the Americans knew that, and they would flee from them because they had no way to fight against it. Okay, so that's important. Now, in Lexington and Concord, they head out late night after midnight, around midnight, they start loading these boats. There's a decision whether or not there's two ways to approach Lexington and Concord. Map of Lexington and Concord. Concord battle. Let me find it for you. Okay. There's two ways to approach Lexington and Concord coming out of Boston. Let's see if I can find it. There it is right there. Let's go with this map. This is good. Okay. Coming out of Boston here, they can go across the neck here, this way here, and go around and do a land attack to get to Lexington and subsequently Concord. Or they can do the fast route. They can cross the bay and come up this way. But they're not sure which of these two routes they're going to take, right? They're not sure which way the British are going to get to them. So before the attack begins, the colonial commanders know the attack's coming. American spies are telling them the British are about to attack. They're going to try to seize your powder stores. We don't know when, and we're not 100% certain where, but we're pretty sure it's going for Lexington and Concord. We don't know what day, what night. But they tell the men to be ready. They call them Minutemen. We want you to be ready within a minute. So every colonial militiaman has his musket, his powder horn, his knife, and his kit. He's got a short kit so he can live a couple days, right? It's like packing an MRE, and we call it a bug out bag, whatever, same thing. They got the same thing, right? When you get the call, be ready to go within 1 minute. You'll be able to wake up, get your boots on, 1 minute, get to the door, get your gear, get to the field. And they've been drilling how to do this because they know the British are coming, but they don't know when. So a man by the name of Paul Revere, with the assistance of a spy, is going to sound the alarm. Paul Revere was a noted horseman. He used to deliver the mail up and down by horse. And Henry Longfellow, Wadsworth Longfellow, records it beautifully in this poem. This is a famous poem. Have you guys heard this poem before? You have? Anybody else heard it? Have you heard it?
What was it called?
The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Hey, listen close. Here you go. You're going to like this. I loved hearing this when I was a kid. But Paul Revere, when he headed out, he had to wait, by the way, for a signal. At midnight, I forget the watchman who was going to go up to the tower of the Old North Church, the highest steeple in town in Boston, and he was going to hang a candle. 1 candle if it's by land, 2 candles if it's by sea. And Paul Revere, when he sees the signal of either 1 or 2 candles, once it's used as 1 or 2, he will take off telling everybody where the attack's coming from. If it's by 1, they're going to go the long way around, they're going to cut the British off. If it's by the sea, they're going to meet them up that road, right? Okay. So listen closely to this, and I'll bring this map up at the same time. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church tower as a signal light. 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. And I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset British man of war, a phantom ship, with each mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from the perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade. By the trembling ladder, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down. A moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath, in the churchyard, lay the dead in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so steep and still. Skip forward. Meanwhile, impatient to mountain ride, booted and spurred, with a heavy stride on the opposite shore, walked Paul Revere. Now he patted at his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and sombre still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight, a second lamp in the belfry burns. What does that mean? They're coming by sea. One if by land, two if by sea. And they do. The British start to cross by boats. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by a steeding fly, fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet, through the gloom and through the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And the spark struck out by the steed in his flight kindled the flame into flame with its light, with its heat. And on he goes. And he goes, it was 12 by the time the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog. And on he goes. Then he goes, and we go forward all the way. When he came to the bridge in Concord town, he heard the bleating of the flock. See if I can see where it says to arms, to arms. So he's going from town to town and he's yelling from arms to arms. That's all, I'm almost to the end of it. Blowing over the meadow brown, and one of his safe asleep in bed, who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball. And on it goes. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born in the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. The British Army crossed into Charlestown, and they made the march all the way up to Lexington. Paul Revere rode through the town saying, to arms, to arms. And by the time the British reached Lexington, there was a force of approximately 50 men holding the far side of the bridge at Lexington. Now they were 500 strong, so 50 men was not a lot. So they ordered the British fixed bayonets, ordered them to disperse. The Colonials, to their credit, wouldn't. Now, they held the bridge. Colonials gave them the first musket fire. The British returned fire, and the Colonials broke and ran. But that was their job, believe it or not. So then the British hurried across Lexington and started the march all the way up toward Concord. But by the time they reached Concord, there was another force assembled. This time not 50 men, but 1,500 men, which in that day was a very substantial force. The British arrived, and upon reaching Lexington, they very quickly realized they were outnumbered 3-1. Now, on their way up, they had no appreciation whatsoever for the colonial militia. So there's a bunch of pitchfork carrying farmers. What are they going to do to us? Those farmers began sniping them. They had snipers positioned with, now at that time, it wasn't only muskets, there was another weapon that had just been introduced, which was the rifle. It was just coming into use, and a handful of people had them. And they put them in high towers and in upper stories of houses, and they started picking off, guess who? The officers. Same thing. Just started peppering them. And then the British came up, ordered them to surrender, and this time the Colonials fired at them, but 1,500 strong. They fired 3 or 4 times. They gave them volleys. And the British realized very quickly they were outnumbered. So they weren't going to win the fight, so they backed off. But the Americans didn't let them go. The Americans harassed them and attacked them the whole way back. And the British were just getting more and more angry on the withdrawal, but there's nothing they can do. Just like that little massacre scene, it's almost the repeat of Braddock's men. Bunch of arrogant men coming into territory they don't know, getting attacked by guys that are hiding behind fences, and they're hiding in the trees and whatnot. It's dark, right? They have no idea. I mean, all night long they're getting all the way back, and by the time the British get back to Boston, they are beat. They've lost quite a few men, not a lot by comparison. They went out with 500. I feel like they lost 50 or some. So 1 out of every 10, which is substantial at the time. But they get harassed the whole way back. Maybe it's they lose 100 men. So they lose a lot of their, but they come back defeated. When they get back, the British realizes something very quickly. That these Americans are armed. They have no intention of going away. So they sit in Boston for a minute. And then they realize they're going to have to seize the hills around Boston. They're going to have to go after I'll take that one right there. Thank you. So Boston itself, I believe, is down here off the map down here. The British cross the channel, and there's Breeds Hill and Bunkers Hill, these two hills right here. The British start, let me make sure I have the map correct. The British begin attack on Bunker Hill. And here's what happens. First of all, the commanding officer that day happens to be a doctor. He was a prominent, Dr. Warren was his name. You'll get him in the book. He's a great fellow. But he earns the men's respect because even as a doctor, he's up front leading his men. He's not even a good shot, but he's out there doing the best that he can. He's just a prominent character in the town. He was actually turned into an officer because he was going to head the medical corps. And his boss, I forget the general who was in charge, General Ward, turned to him and said, Dr. Warren, I'm sure you're a fantastic doctor. We don't need a doctor today. What we need today is I need a combat commander, and that's you. A lot of these men are up on this hill because you're here. So he goes on the top of Breeds Hill. Right? They want to fight on Bunkers Hill. He's like, we should be fighting on Bunkers Hill. But the commander, Artemus Ward, says, no, you're going to stay down on Breeds Hill. The British form up to attack Breeds Hill. They're convinced they're going to sweep the rebels off the top of Breeds Hill. And again, they have about 1,200 men here. British have about the same number. And they fix bayonets to charge this hill. They get to the top of the hill. Colonel Ward tells them to wait until they see the whites of their eyes. Think about how close you have to see before you can see the whites of the eyes of your enemy. How close is that? Right, at what range? Not very far. Bayonet range, basically 25 yards. So they hold their fire, let the British march all the way up this hill. They level musket, and they open up the first volley, and they just decimate the first rank. I mean, the whole first rank just falls down, and the British are stunned. The British retreat from the field. They back up. Now, they don't retreat for long. They charge Breeds Hill 3 times. And 3 times, or twice they're repulsed completely. But 3 times they take volley after volley. The British casualties are staggering. And then Americans finally retreat off of Breeds Hill. They go to Bunker Hill because they retreat up to Bunker Hill. The British have no force to be able to pursue them onto Bunker Hill, and the battle ends. Now, the interesting thing is Dr. Ward, George Washington is appointed over the top of the army at that point. They turn it into an army, and he comes out, and Dr. Ward's all upset. He's about to turn over his command, or he said, fine, or Artemus Ward says, hold on, Dr. Warren. He's going to turn over the command to George Washington. He said, General, I'm sure you want to relieve me of my command because I lost the battle. Here you go. And he's all upset about it. And Washington's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, of course you want to relieve me of command. I lost the battle of the British. He turns to Dr. Warren and he goes, Colonel, if the British would like to buy another hill at the same price, I'll sell it to them. And all of a sudden, Warren goes, so you do realize what happened up here. The British learned very quickly that the Americans were not planning on running from this fight. They were going to stand and fight toe to toe with the British. It changed the map very quickly. So let's get into what happens next. Let's go and open up. As soon as that battle occurs, two other events happen almost back to back. The first is there's a man by the name of Henry Knox. They begin to lay siege on Boston. So the British retreat to Boston, and the Americans own all of the hills around the outside of Boston. But they have no way of going into the city of Boston and capturing it. At the same time, there's another event that occurs up in Vermont. A group of men called Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. Homework silence. Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. They lead siege to Fort Ticonderoga. They're up in Vermont. They attack the British and they capture the stronghold in Fort Ticonderoga. Now, they refuse to go join the rest of the war because they're only fighting for Vermont. They're not fighting for anybody else. George Washington sends his chief of artillery, a man by the name of Henry Knox. Anybody, does that sound familiar at all? What else is named Knox? Fort Knox. This is why Fort Knox is named Fort Knox. He's the father of American artillery. He goes up to Fort Ticonderoga and they captured something in the order of, I think, 70 some odd British cannon. Americans didn't have any cannon, or like they had like one or two. He hires a bunch of sleds and horses and creates some carts to wheel them back, and he takes them all the way back from northern Vermont on the border of Canada and drives them back through the snow to get them all the way back to Boston. And one night, in the middle of the night, they build breastworks, so it's dark. They build these little positions for the cannons, and overnight, when the British wake up and the sun comes up the next morning, their entire city is surrounded by American cannons. Now, they're now captured cannons, and they start firing volleys into the town of Boston. The British are forced to actually evacuate Boston on account of Henry Knox. All right. After this, we begin the Declaration of Independence. So let's open up the Declaration of Independence to talk about it. Get the Declaration of Independence. Caleb, I'm going to have you read the preamble, the Declaration of Independence, if you will. Page 62. First paragraph.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth and separate an equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
What did that say? When in the course of human events, if one people are going to leave another, it's required they write it down why we're going to leave. So we're going to declare why we're leaving. They're declaring their independence from England. What was the name of the war that's about to occur? What's it normally referred to? Revolution or American Revolution. What is a revolution by definition?
Where they change.
Yeah, where you overthrow an existing government. Is that what was happening? No. Were we trying to take over the British government? No. What were we trying to do?
Get our own.
So a war for American independence is a more accurate description than the Revolutionary War or the American Revolution. It's the war for American independence. That's what we're fighting for. We don't want England. We don't want to control the crown. We want England. All right, Dean, read on. Second paragraph.
Behold, these truths be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles, organizing its powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Okay. What's in here?
Talking about the basic human rights of all men and what the purpose of government is, and why they're.
Very good. What is the purpose of government? Yeah, good. What else? They make laws. That's exactly what they're there for. They're endowed by their creator, right? Reference to the creator. Clearly, they're appealing to God. We're endowed by creator. Everybody has to be equal. Who's not being treated equal in this case? Americans. Why? How is it? In what ways are they not being treated equal?
They can't represent in the parliament.
That's right. They're not represented, whereas the British people are. That's their fundamental argument. Okay, and on it goes. Now let's get into the actual objections. I want to get my highlighter because my original copy of this was highlighted. All right, turn the page. I'm on page 64. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having a direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to candid world. So they're calling him a tyrant, right? King of Great Britain, absolute tyranny. He has refused to assent to laws, the most necessary and wholesome for the public good. He has forbidden the governors to pass laws. Saying, look, we're trying to pass laws. He won't let us do so. Refused to pass other laws. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of the public record for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with measures. Basically, they're saying, look, if you've got a complaint against England, where do you have to go to have your complaint heard?
No.
England. Come on over. Now, how long does it take them to get to England? 3 to 6 weeks by ship. One way. Dissolve the representative houses. Refused for a long time after the dissolution. It goes on and on. He's basically not allowing them to govern themselves. That's charge number 1. Let's write that down. Jensen, write this down. Won't allow them to govern themselves. Write a number 1 by it. Won't allow them to govern themselves. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing to assent to laws. On he goes in this. Made judges dependent on his will alone. He's erected a. Here's one of my favorites. He has erected a multitude of new offices and has sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. What does this mean? He's created a whole bunch of bureaucrats to give them a lot of forms to fill out and stupid stuff to do. And we as the colonists have to feed them and pay for them. Huh. That sound familiar? How many guys in government do we just give money to just because they're not, anyway. He has rendered to, here it is. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of the legislature. Right there. What is that about? He's got an armed body of troops. He sent troops here. What's next? He is effected to render the military independent and superior to the civil power. Military law. The military officers are not subject to law. During the Boston Massacre, the captain in charge of the team, whether or not he was guilty, they wouldn't let him stand trial in America. He could have been guilty of murder, and they wouldn't let him stand trial. That's a problem. Let's see. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. For protecting them by mock trial. So a lot of these A lot of these soldiers are like harassing the local populace, and they're not doing anything about it. That's a huge problem. For cutting off trade with parts of the world. Here you go. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. Boom, boom. For depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. The British Army would just grab American colonists and whip them. Take them out, flog them, tar and feather them, whatever they wanted to do. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province. For taking away our charters, for suspending our legislatures. He has abdicated government. He's plundered our seas. Hold on, there's a good one in here. He has incited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. If anybody ever wants to question what the early American Indians were like, and you say, well, they were savages. No, they weren't. Read your own Declaration of Independence. It's widely known the American Indians at that time, brutal savages. How did they fight?
No rules.
No rules. What was one of their methods of killing people? Anybody know?
Scalping.
Scalping. Scalping. Brutal. Let's see. Actually, there's a good scene that I'll give you. You want to know what it's like to be scalped? Let's see if I can find it. No, it's where he takes a knife, a dull knife, and while you're alive, they'll cut that knife right across your forehead and tear off the skin off the top of your head and remove it.
Yeah.
While you are alive. Brutal. And then they let you just die by exposure to the elements. Vicious. And on they go. Now, the debate over whether or not to sign this thing and whether or not to go to war was still raging. The war officially was declared in what year? It was declared in 1776 at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. When did the war begin? 1775. If you go back in the history of the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps, all of their founding dates were 1775. So they were founded before technically we became a nation. Now, let's go to one more important document that I want you to have read to you. The debate over whether or not to fight. Let's go to Liberty or Death, page 47. This is perhaps the most significant portion to read. Anybody know who Patrick Henry was? He's the first governor of the state of Virginia. But he was also a reverend. And there was a debate whether or not there's some men that still wanted to try to sue for peace. This is after the Battle of Bunker Hill, before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Everybody knew, everybody's eyes were on Virginia. Virginia was the largest colony. It's the most powerful. Everybody wanted to know what Virginia was going to do. Was Virginia going to fight or not? The debate was roiling in their legislature. And some men were saying, well, let's give peace another chance. You're going to hear that theme repeatedly throughout history. Peace in our time. Let's give peace another chance. And Patrick Henry stands up and he begins his oration. Let's see if I can get his southern drawl. Mr. President, no man thanks more highly than I do this patriotism, as well as the abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have addressed the House. Different men often see the same subjects in different lights, and therefore I hope that if it not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen, if, entertaining as I do, opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth with sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it nothing less than the question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject, ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time, through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason toward my country and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural to man to indulge in the illusion of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. What is that reference? Song of the Siren. Anybody know? Anybody read the Iliad?
Maybe singing like they make the ships crash.
Odysseus. Right, Odysseus, the song. There's these mermaids that were called sirens, and they would sing such melodious harmonies that the Greek sailors would go toward them and they would lure them into the coasts. You know, it's all legend because there aren't really sirens. And they would crash the ships and then they would capture them, kill them. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we supposed to be in the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not? The biblical reference. The things which so nearly concern the very temporal salvation. For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided. That is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes which men have been pleased to solace themselves in the House. Is it the insidious smile with which our petition has lately been received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. You're hearing all these allusions? This is Judas now, being betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with these warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Our fleets and armies are necessary to the work of love and reconciliation. Have we shown ourselves to be so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array, if its purpose not be to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motives for it? Has Great Britain any other enemy in this quarter of the world to call for this accumulation of Navy's armies? No, sir, she has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They're sent over to bind and rivet upon us the very chains the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument, sir? We have been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer on the subject? And they had, by the way. For 10 years, they've been sitting after plea after plea. Please, let us pass our laws. Let's do our own taxes. Nothing. We've held subject up in every light of which it is to be capable, but it has all been in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not yet been already exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves any longer. So we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming upon us. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves before the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted, our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. I'll skip ahead. No, I'll stay in. In vain, after these things, may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate these inestimable privileges for which we have so long been contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I'll repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. He's got a good point. It's the British Empire, the most powerful empire in the history of the earth. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies shall have bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak. If we make a proper use of the means which the God of nature hath placed in our power, 3 millions of people, population of the colonies at the time, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who provides over the destinies of nations and who will raise friends to fight all our battles before us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, and the brave. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Powerful words, this. There's a lot in there that applies to today. I want you guys to take that particular, if you take nothing else out of today's lesson, I want you to take that one to heart. That one's huge. That speech launches Virginia to war and ignites the colonies. It unifies the colonies. Lexington and Concord showed the British that we have an army able to fight. Bunker Hill showed them that we have an army that was effective to fight. That speech unified the colonies into one force to fight the British Empire. It's enormous in its magnitude. And in a very short amount of time next week, I will take you all the way through the War for American Independence, its first to its last, and share you some of the great heroes. But I'll stop here because I've got less than 10 minutes left. I need to get your homework out and answer your questions. What questions do you guys have at the moment? Start this now. Session 3 starts right there. What questions? What did we learn? I hand out homework assignments. Boston Tea Party. What'd you get to do in Boston? You gotta throw some tea off the, you go to Boston, they'll let you throw some tea off the side of the ship, the clipper ship that they have anchored to port. It's actually, I think it's the USS Constitution. You get to throw it off the side of it. It's actually pretty cool. I think technically it's still the flagship of the United States. That's another story. What else?
The 3 dogmas given by God,
And they are,
church, state, and family.
that's extremely important. What else?
I learned that it is not true that we basically did bad things to the Indians.
That's a good point. That's right. What else? We did later in life. There's a few times we do the wrong thing, but at this point in history, we had none.
that we have to obey people and authorities so long as they punish people.
And they obey God. That's correct. And they're lawfully. All right. Gentlemen, what we have done up till now is we have laid the foundation. We spent the first two sessions laying the foundation of the republics and the history and laying the foundation for law, morality, and warfare. For the remaining 7 sessions, we're going to plow through American history, story after story, event after event, and understand the players that are in history. You're going to see the same repeated theme. Americans resist tyrants over and over again. It's the same story. Yes, we're going to make some mistakes, but that's what you're going to see. There's some fascinating stories. There's some fascinating characters. This is the kind of history you have got to be steeped in. You have to know this stuff. You guys know there's a fight coming. You know this. Either we're going to win it with words or you're going to have to fight it with rifles. But there's a fight coming. Not on my generation, but on yours. Not far out. You need to know this history. You really need to have it down solid. There's good stuff. And you can be proud of your history. Don't let anybody tell you anything otherwise. You compare our history to any other history on the planet, they have far more warts, far more dark spots than the few little warts we have on ours. Yeah, we got a few things that we do wrong, specifically to the Cherokees when it comes to money. For the most part, we do well. We do very well. Slavery is a bad one too. But we're not the only ones. The entire world was involved in the slave trade. We're the ones who actually ended it, us and the English. And yet we don't get credit for it. Instead, we get condemnation for it. All right, let's talk about homework. So you guys have things to read for next time. Okay. First of all, everybody's gonna have this pretty much have the same homework for this week. I need you to watch a movie. You're turning your homework from last time, but I need movie Patriot.
Yes.
Have to watch it this week. Very important. Mel Gibson. Some scenes in there I'm going to draw a reference to. Some great scenes, particularly the Battle of Cowpens.
You know that's movie on? Like, I can find it on.
It's rent, you have to rent it on Prime, and I think on Roku it's free.
Roku Prime. I can lend you the video. I'll buy you the video. Just tell me what you need, Foster. One you need to watch. By the way, if you want to get some videos into your library, you're going to need that one. Later on, you're going to need We Were Soldiers Once and Young. You're going to at some point need to watch Saving Private Ryan if you haven't seen it. Some of these movies you've already seen. But some of the stuff, I don't want you just to read documents. Okay, I have documents loaded up for you to read. Okay. Read the DCA Culture Tyrannus if you haven't read it. Just skim it. Right? I covered the high points, but I just want you to read through it to get a flavor of what's in it. It's important for you. Cool. Read the inaugural address by George Washington. Actually, I want you to read 2 addresses. George Washington, inaugural address. Then I want you to read his farewell address. Good stuff in both of those. I'm not going to give you a whole lot to work on because what I'm going to give you to really read. That's it. I think I'm going to give you one more reading. Read those 2 things and then read. I want you to just dive in to this book. Dive in heavy. Read this book this week. If you don't get to these other 3, this one, and this one, don't worry about it. Hit this one. Read Rise to Rebellion. Go ahead.
Do you have a particular chapter you want us to get to?
Let me see the book. Okay. I want you to start in chapter 1. Thou mayest. You can skip all the introduction, all the other stuff. By the way, if you want to get through it fast, you can listen to it on order Audible. But it's a good read. Just chapters 1 through 45, I would do it. Yeah, 1 through 45. I'm telling you, what you're going to see in this book, which is going to be fascinating for you, is its absolute relevance to today. As you start reading through it, just about every argument that they're making against the English crown is the same argument that we are making against the United States government today. And that's what happened, by the way, in the 2024 election. All of this stuff right there, right? If you want to skip through, you can like speed through the battle narratives if you want and dig out the points, but the battle narratives are most interesting. So it's going to bring history alive. You give you one reading, it's a long reading, but it's a good reading. When you sit down, you're just going to get into it. Just give yourself, just plan a couple, 2-3 hours every night. Just sit down and read. If you want to get through it, plow through it faster, I'd put it on Audible, put it in your headset and listen. What you want to hear is the things that are happening. What is George Washington doing? What is get through the first 5 chapters is really key. Get to see what Ben Franklin's doing. Later on, you'll figure out how the French joined the war. If you can only get through the front half of the book, the most important stuff happens in the front half of the book. But it gets more interesting the deeper you get into it. Jeff Sciarra makes it very interesting. It's a good read. It's entertaining. He brings that whole bit of history to life. It's really the only book that it is the only book I'm assigning you to read cover to cover. Rise to Rebellion. If you like it, he's got a lot of other history books. I'd encourage you to get on Audible and just download them and start listening. You will learn American history in swaths. So that's it. I'll stop right there. I won't give you any more than Rise to Rebellion. Think you can get through that book in a week? In a week. Do you have Audible?
Yeah.
Okay. At least get through let me see it. Let me see the book again. I'll tell you how many chapters you have to get
If
through.
I'm listening to it, I can probably get through it.
You're going to love it. Once you get into it, you won't be able to put it down. You won't be able to put it down once you get through it. You can't get through it. Give some of this Adams, some Rhode Island. I want you to at least get through. So where's the attack? Okay. Read if you have to skim, read chapters 1, 2, 3. And jump up to chapter 28. 2, 3, 28. Yeah. And read 28 to probably 36. You'll miss some stuff, but that'll be fun for you. 1 through 3 and 28 to 36 is the focus. You can't get through all the way through it, but there's so much there. All right, now honesty. How much of you? Absolute honesty. How many of you guys are enjoying American history, enjoying what you learned?
Better any class I've ever taken.
Okay. How much of it you're not? It's okay. Some of this stuff's dry. It's fine. But if you like it, this is good. This is how history should be taught. It is just a series of stories. But just hold onto your hat, because when you hear some of these stories and some of these things about these men, you're going to be floored. Freak aside. This is
I'm
my
really
free
enjoying
spoiler
it.
for Nick. Chandler, what's up, buddy?
I'm really enjoying the class.
Good. I'm
So far.
glad.
Super
I want to
fun.
make it come alive for you. That's the point.
Yes, sir.
Because you guys need this more than you realize. You guys need this. Here's a free spoiler. It's my free spoiler for next week. Who was the first president of the United States? You cannot answer. Caleb, who's the first president of the United States?
I don't want to answer this because I'm probably gonna get it wrong.
Go ahead and answer it, though. Give me your answer. Give me the answer you think it is.
Huh?
Give me, no. You can't give the answer.
I really don't want to answer because I'll look stupid.
Chandler, who's the first president of the United States?
Was it George Washington?
Common thought.
See, that was gonna be the answer.
All right, Jensen, give it to me. Peyton Randolph. Paul, who the heck is Peyton Randolph? Never heard of him. If you want to find out who he is and why it is he's the first president of the United States, in the back of your handbook, my one spoiler I'll give you for next week. Page 237, the Forgotten Presidents. There were 16 presidents during the War for American Independence and under the Articles of Confederation that served. And I just want to tell you about the first one. It'll take me 3 minutes to tell you the story and I'm done. 2 minutes. Ben Franklin was a very remarkable man. And I just want you to understand the character of these guys. Oftentimes you get Americans saying, oh, the people who before us, they're idiots, right? Early Americans, they were illiterate morons. Not even close to true. These boys were so much more literate than we are. It's not even funny. Ben Franklin was pretty amazing. Amazing man. He commented one day why he was impressed by a man by the name of Peyton Randolph, who's the president. He said, Peyton Randolph impresses me because Peyton Randolph has the ability, he was not exaggerating on this point. He can write 2 letters to 2 different people in 2 different languages at the same time. Going with this pen, 2 letters, one in English, one in French, on 2 different topics. And he would do this. He trained himself to be able to do this. And these were pretty deep letters. If you were getting a letter from Peyton Randolph, I mean, they didn't have copy machines. They didn't have computers. And off he goes. But the only reason that Ben Franklin thought that was impressive is because Ben Franklin, like most of our founding fathers, could only write 2 letters to 2 different people in 2 different languages if it was on the same topic. These are our founding fathers. We don't even have men around like these, let alone statesmen or politicians or presidents. We don't have men like these. There's very, very few. They had a lot of them back there. And you read the biographies of these 16 presidents, what's going to impress you the most? None of them want to really be president. You know what they want to do? They want to fight. Most of them are regimental commanders going like, why do I have to go be the president? Well, it's your turn. You go be the president for a while. Mr. Thomas Mifflin, you go be the president. No, I'm the aide de camp to George Washington. Yeah, well, not anymore. You got to go be the president. It's your turn. Some of these other guys already did the job. It's your turn. And then they would do their 6 months as the president, and they would go get back in the field and they go fight the British. These were men, educated warrior poets. That's who they were. Anyway, all right. I'll leave you at that. Who wants to close this prayer for tonight? You got it, Jensen? Let's hear it, buddy. Close in prayer. Pray over here so they can hear you.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much that we can all just come here and learn about you and learn about the history that you created and your creation. Please help us have a good rest of the night. We get all the homework done and tell more people about all that we learned. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. If somebody wants to do something fun, Google the coin toss. The coin toss for readout number 10. It's a fun one. Fine, you just want- this is extra credit. The coin toss. Readout. Number 10. They know more about it. Coin toss. Readout number 10. Yes, sir. You may. Let me end this thing. Hold on. All right, Chandler, anything else you got, brother?
Can you send me a picture of the whiteboard with all the assignments on it? Because I was driving on the way home.
Yes, there's only one
didn't get
assignment
to
that you need to know, but I'll take a
write it
picture
down.
of it. You need to
Okay.
read Rise to Rebellion.
Perfect.
That's all I'm asking, but I'll take a picture. I'll send it to you right now.
Yes, sir. Hey,
Have a good night. Thank you, buddy.
yes, sir.
See you.
You too. Thank you.
Stop sharing. Let me end the, uh-oh, stop recording. Okay, cool. Yes, stop.